containing an attempt to recover and reconstitute the lost origins of the myths and mysteries, types and symbols, religion and language, with Egypt for the mouthpiece, and Africa as the birthplace.
So, today on the deep dive, we're unpacking this massive, honestly kind of glaring contradiction right at the start of the book of Genesis.
Right, yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, and we're specifically looking at this viral claim that was made by the biblical scholar, Dr. Robert M. Price. He has this video, and it's titled, Biblical Angels Were Once Gods. And in it, he points out this textual flaw in the creation story that is just so obvious. You know, it feels like this absolute checkmate against anyone who's trying to read the Bible as a literal history book.
Yeah, it's one of those things where once you see it, you can't really unsee it.
Exactly. But here's the twist for today. Instead of just kind of arguing about ancient Hebrew translations or doing, theological gymnastics to make it fit, we're going to use a completely different lens to look at this problem.
Right, because the standard textual criticism only takes you so far.
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to evaluate this contradiction using the monumental comparative mythology of the 19th century Egyptologist Gerald Massey. And we're also going to bring in some supporting insights from ancient texts like the Metu-Neter, the philosopher Amblichos, and this esoteric mathematician Schwaller de Lubitsch.
It's a heavy lineup.
It is, yeah. But our mission today is really to answer this kind of wild question, right? Like, what if the contradictions in the Bible aren't historical errors at all? Like, what if they're actually these perfectly preserved, highly advanced astronomical blueprints, and we've just completely forgotten how to read them?
And I think that is exactly the framework we have to build today, because when you look at Dr. Price's video, he is engaging in a very traditional form of textual criticism. I mean, he's looking for historical consistency.
Right. He's treating it like a timeline.
Exactly. But according to Massey's just massive volumes of work, evaluating these texts for historical accuracy it's fundamentally the wrong approach. Like, it's a category error entirely.
Okay, right. And before we get into the heavy mythology part of that, I want the listener to picture something. Because if you're listening to this and, maybe you grew up in a very traditional Sunday school setting, hearing that the Bible might be an astronomical calendar instead of a history book might feel like your brain is just kind of breaking a little bit.
Yeah.
So imagine you're standing in front of an incredibly complex, antique grandfather clock, right? And it has all these dials for the moon phases and gears tracking the seasons and hands for the hours and the minutes and seconds. Now imagine someone walks up, stares really intently at those dials, and gets incredibly frustrated because they are trying to read the clock as a literal human face.
Right.
And they're pointing at it saying, well, this face makes no sense at all. Like, the eyes are in the wrong place, the nose is constantly spinning in a circle, and the mouth is just this swinging pendulum. Like, it's totally contradictory.
That is a phenomenal analogy, actually. Because if you don't know it's a mechanism designed for tracking time, the features are going to seem completely absurd. I mean, you're demanding it be something it was never designed to be. You're demanding it be a biological face.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what Gerald Massey argues we have done with the foundational texts of the Judaeo-Christian tradition. We're looking at a cosmic clock and getting angry that it's a terrible human face.
Okay, so let's establish the conflict from the video first. In this video, there's a former Jehovah's Witness who asks Dr. Price for the biggest, most undeniable, irreconcilable contradiction in the Bible.
Right.
And Dr. Price, he points straight to the opening act, right? Genesis chapter 1 versus chapter 2.
Yes. Price highlights the order of creation. So in the account of Genesis 1, which scholars often call the priestly source, the text explicitly says that animals are created first. So you have the fish, the birds, the beasts of the earth. And then after all the animals, a generic humanity, or Adam, is created.
Right. But then you literally just turn the page to Genesis 2, and the order is completely flipped.
Yeah.
Suddenly the text says man is created from the dust, and then God brings all the animals to the man to be named.
Exactly. And Price frames this as this embarrassment of riches in terms of textual contradictions. He's saying, look, if you want to read this as a historical timeline of events that literally happened on a Tuesday and a Wednesday thousands of years ago, you have a massive problem.
Right.
You cannot have it both ways. Either the animals were here first or the man was here first.
Right. And to be fair, like from a literalist standpoint, Price is absolutely correct. It's a glaring contradiction. But our goal here is to critically assess his methodology using Gerald Massey's work, specifically the natural genesis. So how does Massey look at this exact same contradiction? Because Price is basically treating the text as a failed history book.
Well, Massey would actually agree that Price's claims are textually accurate to the Hebrew. I mean, the flip-flop is really there in the text. You can't deny that.
Right.
However, Massey argues that Price's entire critique depends entirely on this unexamined assumption of literalism.
Wait, unpack that for me. Because Price is actively attacking literalism in his video, right? So how is he depending on it?
Well, because by pointing it out as a quote-unquote failed history, Price is still judging the text by the metrics of history.
Oh, I see.
He is assuming the original intent of the text was to record a linear narrative of events, and that it just did a clumsy job of it. But Massey, in the Natural Genesis, specifically Volume 2, completely rejects that premise. He argues that the Genesis creation accounts are actually the fragmented detritus of much older Egyptian wisdom. And to the ancient Egyptian mind, creation was not a one-time genesis of matter out of a dark void.
Okay, so what was it then?
Yeah.
Like if they weren't talking about the physical creation of the planet, what were they actually talking about?
So to the ancient mind, creation was the result of establishing certain periods of time and season.
Time and season.
Yeah. It was about bringing mathematical order, measurement, and cycles to the chaos of the cosmos. So when they talked about creating the heavens and the earth, they were talking about mapping the celestial bodies, understanding the cycles of the stars, the solstices, the equinoxes.
Okay, wait. Let me just stop you there. I have to push back a little bit, or at least, play the skeptic here.
Sure.
Because if this flip-flop between humans and animals is as glaring as Dr. Price says it is, why on earth did the guys writing or editing the Bible leave it in? I mean, the redactors, the priests putting this together in antiquity, they weren't stupid.
No, not at all.
Right. So wouldn't they have noticed that they just slapped two completely different contradicting timelines back to back? Like they couldn't have been that careless.
And that is the crucial question. And it's the very thing that proves Massey's point. They didn't notice a historical contradiction because they were never writing a chronological history to begin with. They were layering different mythological time cycles. So the Egyptian originals that these stories stem from, they didn't conflict because they were symbolic mappings of different eras of the heavens.
Oh, okay. So they weren't saying event A happened and then event B happened. They were just recording different layers of a cosmic calendar.
Precisely. It is only when later writers and theologians, people who had lost the original keys to the Egyptian symbolism, when they tried to force this astronomical mythos into a linear historical human narrative, that's when the contradictions were born.
Wow.
They took two different astronomical blueprints, tried to read them as a biography of a guy named Adam, and suddenly, going back to your analogy, the clock looked like a broken face.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah.
But if we want to understand how they were mapping the heavens, we have to talk about their visual language, because they obviously weren't using like algebra or digital spreadsheets.
Right.
And this brings us to one of the most fascinating parts of Massey's work, which is how the ancients actually pictured these cosmic forces.
Yeah.
And to do this, Massey comes out swinging against Enlightenment philosophers, specifically David Hume.
Yes. So David Hume famously proposed that there is a universal tendency for mankind to conceive of all beings like themselves. It's the idea of anthropomorphism.
Right.
We look up at the moon and we see the man in the moon.
Yeah, the idea that, primitive man was scared of the thunder, so he imagined a giant, angry man with a beard throwing lightning bolts, creating gods in his own image.
Exactly. But Massey, in his masterwork, Ancient Egypt, The Light of the World, Vol. 1, he strongly refutes this. He argues that this is a very modern kind of arrogant projection.
Interesting.
He says primitive man was actually far too helpless, far too much at the mercy of the elements to impose his own puny likeness on the overwhelming forces of nature.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because if you're a primitive human, you don't feel powerful. You're trying to survive a flood or a hurricane or a drought. The idea of force or power didn't come from human muscles. I mean, a human couldn't conjure a storm.
Right. So why would they represent the awesome power of a storm as a human?
Yeah.
They wouldn't. Instead, Massey explains that they use what he calls zootypes.
Zootypes?
Yeah, zootypes. Animals, birds, reptiles. They use the animal kingdom to represent superhuman elemental forces.
Okay, let's dig into that because I want to make sure I understand the mechanism here. Why animals specifically?
Well, because the animals possessed natural powers and sensitivities that humans lacked. I mean, these people were observing the natural world incredibly closely. And Massey gives some brilliant examples of this. Take the force of the wind, the rushing, invisible power of the air. To the ancient Egyptians, this was imaged as Shu, the lion.
Okay, why a lion for the wind? That doesn't seem super intuitive to me.
Well, if you've ever felt the sheer vibrating force of a lion's roar, or felt its hot, panting breath, it is a visceral experience of moving air.
Oh, wow.
The roar of the lion is the howling of the wind in their symbolic language.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or take the earth itself. The earth, as the great, swollen bringer forth of all life, was imaged as Apt, the water cow, or the hippopotamus.
Okay, because a pregnant hippopotamus emerging from the Nile River is this massive, undeniable image of fertility and life coming out of the water and the mud.
Exactly. And the soul of life moving silently beneath the water was Sebek, the crocodile. They weren't worshiping a literal crocodile, which is a very common misconception.
Right.
They were using the crocodile as a hieroglyph, a living symbol, to express a natural, elemental force they couldn't otherwise articulate. They were thinking in object pictures.
Okay, so this is all pre-anthropomorphic. It's pre-human representation. The symbols are entirely elemental and animalistic. And if we take this framework and apply it back to the opening of the Bible, that contradiction that Dr. Price points out suddenly starts to look very different.
Yes, it does.
Let's look at who is doing the creating in Genesis 1. Because the Hebrew text says it's the Elohim.
Right, the Elohim. And as many biblical scholars know, Elohim is a plural word. It is often translated simply as God, but it grammatically means gods or powers.
Okay, so who are the Elohim according to Massey? Because Price is asking in his video if angels were once gods, and we need to define these terms.
Yeah, we have to define them carefully. According to Massey in the Natural Genesis, the Elohim are not a singular human-like deity sitting on a cloud dictating the universe.
Right.
The concept is derived directly from the 7 associate gods of Egypt, the 7 spirits of the Great Bear constellation.
Wait, hold on. The Great Bear constellation, as in Ursa Major.
Yes. So the ancient Egyptians observed that the 7 stars of the Great Bear never set below the horizon in their latitude. They were the eternal, turning watchers of the northern sky.
Oh, I see.
They represented the primary celestial forces, the fundamental timekeepers of the long cycles. So the Elohim of Genesis 1 are literally a preservation of these plural celestial elemental forces.
Okay, I think I'm putting the pieces together here.
Yeah.
If the creators in Genesis 1 are these ancient pre-human celestial forces, right?
Yes.
And their visual language was based on zootypes, animals, then it makes total sense that in Genesis 1, the animals are created first.
Precisely. Massey points out that the animals in Genesis 1 are not literal fauna filling a literal garden in the Middle East. They are the primordial zootypes. They are the first representations of elemental forces.
So the timeline flip isn't a mistake at all. Mythologically speaking, the animal symbols had to come first, because historically, humans used animal symbols long before they started imagining gods with human faces.
That is exactly the key. Genesis 1 represents the older, elemental, zootypic layer of the mythos. And then Genesis 2, where Adam is created first, that represents a much later anthropomorphic layer of mythology, where the cosmic forces are finally given human-like forms and a human-centric narrative.
Wow.
So Dr. Price reads it as 2 conflicting historical accounts of Tuesday and Wednesday, but Massey reads it as the evolution of human symbol-making, preserved perfectly in 2 layered texts.
That is wild. I mean, it completely disarms the contradiction argument by revealing a much deeper layer of human history. But this actually brings us right to the core of Dr. Price's video title, right? Biblical angels were once gods. We've talked about the Elohim as constellations, but what on earth is an angel in this Egyptian framework?
Right. To answer that, we have to look at the linguistic roots, which Massey outlines in detail in his Book of the Beginnings, Volume 1. Massey traces the Hebrew word for angels, which is shinin, and that literally translates to repeatings.
Repeatings?
Yeah.
That's a really weird translation for an angel.
It is weird until you look at the Egyptian, because in Egyptian, the word an means to repeat or to announce. And the word care means to know, to utter, or word. So you put them together and you get the Ankeru.
The Ankeru angels.
Yes. The Ankeru are the announcers of time. They are the repeaters of cycles.
Okay, so we are back to our grandfather clock analogy then. If the overarching universe is the clock itself, and the Elohim or the gods are the big, slow-moving dials, the angels are what? The gears.
They are exactly the gears. In the ancient mind, angels were not humans with swan wings playing harps.
Right.
They were the specific repeating cycles in the celestial clock. And Massey uses a really brilliant example to prove this, drawing from the Talmud.
The Talmud being the central text of rabbinic Judaism.
Right.
So what does it say?
The Talmud contains a claim that one angel is taller than another by as many miles as a man could travel on a journey of 500 years.
Okay, hold on. You're telling me a 500-year-tall giant angel isn't just a mythic creature? Because look, if I'm a modern literalist scholar, I look at that text and I mock it as just absurd superstition. I mean, it sounds like a bad fantasy novel.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we know Massey isn't just projecting complicated math onto what's basically a simple fairy tale?
Because we have the astronomical records of the Egyptians to back it up.
Okay.
Massey decodes this completely. He points out that an angel of 500 years is not a physical measurement of height. It simply personifies a phoenix period.
Okay, stop there. Explain a phoenix period to me like I'm 5. What does that mean astronomically?
Sure. So in ancient astronomy, they tracked cycles where certain stars or planets would return to the exact same position in the sky relative to the sun. The phoenix cycle was a specific period of time, often calculated as roughly 500 years, marking a specific planetary alignment. It was a unit of cosmic measurement. So when the Talmud speaks of an angel that is 500 years tall, the angel is the cycle. It is the personification of that mathematical period.
Wow. So the height of the angel is literally just a metaphor for the length of the astronomical cycle.
Exactly. As Massey writes in Book of the Beginnings, and this is a great quote, he says, "Minutes 60 die every hour, as moments 60 pass every minute. These are the midges of the angelhood."
The midges of the angelhood. That is gorgeous. A midge is like a tiny, short-lived fly, right?
Yeah.
So the seconds and minutes are the tiny, buzzing angels, and the 500-year cycles are the towering giants. It's poetry, but it's precise mathematical science to them.
Exactly.
But wait, this brings up a massive question. Because the prompt of Price's video is asking if angels and gods are the same thing, or if angels were once gods. If both a god and an angel represent the heavens and the stars, what is the actual difference between them in Massey's Egyptian framework?
Okay, there's a very strict distinction, and Massey lays it out clearly. The gods, specifically what were known as the Cronian divinities.
Cronian, like Kronos, the Greek god of time.
Exactly. The root relates to time. These Cronian gods were the primary keepers or tellers of time and season. They represent the macro cycles. They are the overarching laws of nature, the static structure of space, and time itself. They are the prime movers.
Okay, so if God is the overarching force, the frame of the clock, the concept of time itself,
Then the angels, the Ankeru, are the messengers and repeaters of those periods. They are the moving parts. If the gods are the dials, the angels are the ticking second hands. They are the specific repeating revolutions and frequencies that actually carry out the law of the macro cycle.
So they aren't demoted gods. They have a completely different functional job in the cosmic engine. Gods are the structure, angels are the mechanics.
Precisely. And Massey isn't pulling this out of thin air either. We can support this directly with the writings of the Neoplatonist philosopher Iamblichus.
Right. And for the listener, who exactly is Iamblichus?
He was a Syrian philosopher who lived around 300 AD, and he was deeply initiated into the Egyptian and Chaldean mystery schools. He wrote extensively about the nature of the divine, and Iamblichus noted that gods possess tranquility and are absolutely unchangeable. They are the static, immutable laws of the universe. I mean, gravity doesn't change, the structure of space doesn't change.
Right.
But angels, Iamblichus says, possess a disposition for order but are not free for motion.
Wait, okay, so if the gods are static and the angels are in motion, and motion is the only way we measure time, does that mean the angels literally represent time itself?
Yes. Motion equals time, and time equals angels. They are the moving parts of the universe.
That is incredible.
And if we connect this to another source from our research today, the Metu Neter, which is an ancient Egyptian spiritual text detailing the spheres of the Tree of Life, it explicitly states that angels are strictly personifications of the divine word. They are hiko, or mantras. They are vibratory formulas of cosmic action.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Under this lens, an angel is not a guy with a halo, An angel is an energetic transmission. It's a frequency. It's the physical law of motion making the universe tick.
Exactly. That is exactly it.
This is so dense, but it is incredibly rewarding. So what does this all mean when we go back and actually reread Genesis? Let's take this new lens, the timekeepers, cycles, zootypes, and let's apply it to a couple of the most famous biblical passages to finalize this refutation of Price's literalist critique.
Sounds good.
Let's look at Genesis chapter 3, the fall of man.
Ah, a perfect example.
Right, because the literalist view, which Dr. Price relies on to point out his contradictions, says this is a historical event. Two naked people in a literal garden in Mesopotamia ate an apple, a talking snake tricked them, and they disobeyed a deity, dooming all of humanity.
Right. That's the standard reading, but in Massey's interpretation in the natural Genesis, the fall has absolutely nothing to do with human morality or original sin or historical real estate. It was an astronomical allegory for a failure in keeping time faithfully.
Okay, wait, how does a star fail to keep time? I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that one. Stars don't have free will to disobey, right?
Yeah, they don't, but our perspective of them changes. It's about observing periodicity over vast stretches of time. And to understand this, we need to quickly explain a concept called the precession of the equinoxes.
Okay, ELI 5 time. Explain precession for me.
Sure. Imagine the Earth is a spinning top. As a top spins rapidly, its axis, the stem of the top, slowly wobbles in a circle.
Yeah, I've seen that.
The Earth does the exact same thing. Our axis wobbles, making a slow, giant circle in the heavens over the course of about 26,000 years.
Okay, so the North Pole isn't always pointing at the exact same star in space.
Exactly. Right now, our North Star is Polaris. But thousands of years ago, it was a totally different star, Thuban. Because of this 26,000-year wobble, the stars slowly drift in the night sky from our perspective. It takes centuries to even notice it.
Oh, I see. So if I'm an ancient astronomer and I establish my entire calendar based on a specific star rising on the spring equinox,
Yes.
1,000 years later, that star isn't going to be there on the equinox anymore. It will have drifted.
Yes. And in the ancient tracking of the heavens, earlier time cycles, which were based on these lunar or stellar observations, they eventually fell out of sync with the actual solar year. The stars literally wandered. The old celestial timekeepers failed. And in the mythological language, they were symbolically cast out, or they fell from their positions of authority in the heavens.
So the fall of man is just stars falling out of alignment.
Exactly. The Egyptian prototype for this story is the celestial revolt against Ra, the sun god. And Massey notes that the mythological creation of mankind was written to fill the room of the fallen spirits.
Wait, what does that mean?
Meaning, the ancient astronomers calculated new, corrected cycles based on solar time, and these new timekeepers replaced the old, failed ones. The Fall of Man is a dramatic, poetic story about adjusting the cosmic calendar. It is ancient astrophysics. It's not original sin.
That is mind-blowing. It takes all the guilt, all the shame, all the historical baggage out of the story, and it just turns it into this majestic tracking of the cosmos.
It really does.
But if we keep going in Genesis 3, what about the punishment? Because God famously kicks Adam and Eve out of Eden, and he blocks the entrance with a flaming sword and the cherubim.
Yeah.
It's an iconic, super intimidating image. How do angelic bouncers fit into a celestial calendar?
This is actually one of my favorite decodings by Massey. In his works, Ancient Egypt and Book of the Beginnings, he traces the Hebrew word cherub directly to the Egyptian word keper or kerafu.
And what were the kerafu?
They were astronomical markers. Often they were depicted as a pair of lion gods joined back to back that kept the gates of dawn. One lion faced backward into the night, the other faced forward into the day. They represented the horizon.
Oh, wow. That sounds exactly like a marker for time. But you mentioned Kepler as well.
Yes. Alternatively, the symbol for the cherubim was the two scarab beetles, the Kepler. These beetles were placed at the solstitial join of the circle of the year.
Okay, we need to unpack the mechanism here. Because why a scarab beetle? I mean, why a dung beetle of all things?
Because of how the dung beetle behaves in nature. A scarab beetle gathers a ball of dung, lays its seed inside it, and rolls it backward across the sand. To the ancient Egyptians, watching this beetle roll a perfect sphere across the ground was the ultimate living zootype of the unseen force that rolls the glowing sphere of the sun across the sky every day.
Oh my God.
The beetle rolling the ball is the cosmic gear turning the sun.
The Zootype. They used the beetle to explain the actual mechanics of the solar system.
Exactly. So they placed 2 of these symbolic beetles at the solstices, the longest and shortest days of the year, to mark the turning points of celestial time.
So the cherubim guarding Eden aren't literal angels with wings standing outside a physical garden in the Middle East. They are astronomical markers. They are the lions of the horizon, or the beetles of the solstice.
Yes, and when the later Hebrew texts talk about their god, Adonai, dwelling between the cherubim, Massey argues this is a direct, undeniable continuation of the Egyptian imagery of Adam-Ra, the sun god, seated between the 2 lions.
It shifts the responsibility of
beetles,
salvation from a
marking the
historical
transition of
event
time.
back into the human heart. And the flaming sword. Because Genesis says there was a flaming sword that turned every way.
Well, the flaming sword that turns every way is the radiating disk of the sun itself, rising between these markers on the horizon, the rays of the sun turning in all directions. As Massey puts it, this is pure astronomical poetry.
Right. And to read it as a historical property dispute over a garden,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sad, honestly. It's like finding a beautifully written poetic manual for a clock and getting mad that the gears don't have human feelings.
Exactly. And that is the methodological flaw in Dr. Price's approach to these specific contradictions.
Right. He's finding contradictions because he's wearing the wrong glasses entirely. He's looking for literal history in a book of astronomy.
Which brings us to Massey's ultimate conclusion. The foundations of these biblical texts are deeply rooted in Egyptian astronomy, cosmology, and mythology. When this original material was adapted and transformed into later Jewish and Christian scriptures, it was gradually stripped of its scientific structure. The original meaning was lost. So literalist interpretations entirely misunderstand this grand, symbolic, and scientific framework.
It is so liberating to escape that contradiction debate. When you stop fighting over whether the text is a broken history book, you discover it's a perfectly intact cosmic calendar.
It really is.
Okay, well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave the listener with a final provocative thought. We mentioned the esoteric mathematician Schwaller de Lubitz at the beginning of the show.
Yes, the 20th century Egyptologist who focused heavily on the sacred science and physics embedded in Egyptian temples.
Right, well, according to Schwaller, the ancient Egyptians viewed the word, the spoken utterance, as a vibratory string that actually creates matter. It's like ancient string theory. It's physics. Now, I want you to think about what we just learned today. If angels are the Ankuru, the uttered words, the repeaters of time, then angels are not invisible men looking down from the clouds.
They are the frequencies. They're the vibration.
Exactly. They are the repeating rhythms of physics. They are the vibratory strings, the literal cycles of time and geometry that are holding your body, your cells, and the entire universe together at this very second. You aren't just being guarded by angels. Under this ancient scientific framework, you are literally made of angels.
It's a beautiful way to look at it.
It's a wild paradigm shift. Definitely something to think about the next time you look at a clock or the night sky. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Containing an attempt to recover and reconstitute the lost origins of the myths and mysteries, types and symbols, religion and language, with Egypt for the mouthpiece, and Africa as the birthplace.